everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening. And I'm really excited about this one because I think this is the first one that I haven't just taken one aspect of my book and shared it. I'm actually taking three tonight, and I just kind of wanted to first talk about why I wrote this book. When I was a kid, growing up at home, really like I was unlovable, and I didn't even recognize that I felt that way. I chalked it up to fear, and I chalked it up to a bunch of other things. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized that the underlying issue all along was that I had been feeling like I was unlovable. And it wasn't because of one person or one thing that happened. Like, I went through a lot of traumatic experiences, but it was because at the end of the day, I knew who I was inside, and I felt like I was unworthy to be loved. And I don't know how many of you actually have ever felt that way or ever considered yourselves to be in a position where maybe you thought someone didn't love you the way that you deserve to be loved. Um, and for me, like, a big part of that was I knew God loved me, but I couldn't understand why he loved me because I saw how messed up I was. And I couldn't understand how a perfect God could love a mess like me. But yet I knew that he did. And it was always this thing that I wrestled with. And throughout my life, I tried to please other people. I wore masks. I tried everything to get people to love me. And it was to no avail. I lost relationships. And a lot of times I ended up lonely or alone. And when I lost my my second to last relationship, I should say, because now I'm married to my husband. Um, I gave up on relationships, and I was like brokenhearted. And I thought, okay, I really am unlovable. Like, I can't even find a relationship that lasts. And my sister encouraged me to seek the Lord. And in the next 6 months of seeking the Lord and pressing into him, he taught me why I'm lovable. He taught me, he showed me through his word and like through his gentle words to me. Like, every time I journaled, the first thing he would say to me is, "My precious daughter." And that was something that I needed to hear because I didn't feel precious. I didn't feel that inside. And to hear that every single day was an important piece of that transformation for me. And another big piece of it was the fact that God showed me what he sees in me. He showed me who I am to him. And so I was able to let go of how I saw myself, because how I saw myself was not the same way he saw me. And that's because, through Jesus' sacrifice, God doesn't see us through the lens that we see ourselves through. We know all the things we do wrong. We know all of our sin. And if we don't look at ourselves through the lens of Jesus's sacrifice on the cross, then that's all we see. And God doesn't look at us that way. And so for me, that was huge, being able to recognize it and actually see it for myself, and not just know it, but see it and believe it and walk in it. And that process took 6 months for me. And this book talks about a lot of the things that I faced in my life, that questions I had, and that God was able to reveal answers to, things that I struggled with. And tonight we're just going to touch on three aspects of things that are in my book. And they're not even the things that I shared on my podcast, because there's so many good things from my book to glean. So if you haven't heard the podcasts, I encourage you to listen to them, because it's other stuff that you're not going to necessarily hear tonight. And so be blessed by that. Also, if you haven't gotten my book and what I've said tonight really resonates with you, then, feel free to contact NOSA at uh, info@nosafoundation.com, and we can get you a copy of that. They're $20. Or if you'd rather have an ebook, they're $12. So they're considerably cheaper, and I can email that to you directly. So let us know, and we can get that sorted out for you. And we can get, if you want one mailed to you, we can get it shipped to you. Anyway, so that is where this is coming from. When I was praying about which parts of my book to share tonight, God really put on my heart 3 topics: comparison, purpose, and destiny. And at first I was like, okay, well, purpose and destiny definitely go together, but where does comparison fit into this picture? And me and the Lord wrestled with that, and he started showing me things, and I was like, oh, that's how it fits. And so we're going to start with talking about comparison, because I feel like that is one of the biggest things that holds us back and makes us feel unlovable. And for me in my book, I think for comparison, a lot of the times I was so focused on what people would think of me, or what people like were doing and being, that I totally lost sight of who I was. And that's what drove me to wear the masks that I did. And, even though I didn't actually call it comparison, that's exactly what I was doing. So the first question that I asked myself while I was preparing for it was, why do we even compare ourselves to other people? And these are some of the things that I came up with to measure our value or worth. So if you feel like someone else is worthy or valuable, then you're going to sometimes look at them and then look at yourself. And where do you measure up according to that parameter, according to that value that you've given this person? And it's not necessarily a fair measurement, because first off, you're the one who's deciding what their value or worth is, or the world is. And who are we to put value or worth on other people? God does that, right? Like, so I think sometimes we miss that. And so we're measuring against something that we're not even supposed to be measuring for ourselves. And then another thing is to determine how successful we are. So if we feel like other people are successful, then and we're in a similar field, then we would look at them and see how successful we are compared to them. Insecurity sometimes causes us to compare ourselves to others. And it's because we're like feeling short in a way. And so we look for people who are either better than us in that area, or less than us in that area, depending on where we're at. And, sometimes if we feel like we need to just stay where we're at, we'll look at those who are like way better than us and go, yeah, I'm exactly where I should be. This is exactly why I'm feeling this way, and kind of like wallow there. Or there's times when we're like, I want to feel better about myself. So then we look for people who are worse off so we can like feel better and like try to feel a little bit more security. So there's like 2 ways we swing when we're feeling insecure. Sometimes it's low self-worth. So we'll look at our like selves and go, I don't know, like I feel unworthy. So then we'll look at other people and actually see, is that true or not? To see how far along the journey we are, to find the path through what we're going through. Sometimes if people are further along the path and than we are, we'll like examine ourselves through those eyes. And there's a positive way of doing that, and there's a negative way of doing that. And the positive way is to learn from what they've done. And the negative thing is to be like, oh, my path doesn't look anything like theirs. And to become discouraged because of that. Pride. Pride is a big one too. Like especially if you're trying to make yourself feel even like more important than you were already, then you're going to continue to look for people who are struggling in that area. so that you're like feeling like you're justified in how you feel about yourself. And that one is sneaky. Like, it's not like you're out to actually go, oh, yes, I'm superior. That's not your motivation. Your motivation is just, I want to feel good about myself, right? And so it's not like you're actively trying to like elevate yourself. It just sometimes happens. Elevating people to places where they shouldn't be. That one is interesting because um we always like put people on pedestals, especially people that we honor and people that we really respect. And it's good to honor and respect them, but it's not right to put them in places of um, position over us. It's not good to be elevating them to the places where they're not supposed to be, considering them like their celebrity status in our life, I guess, is the best way to put it. So that's an important thing. Increased security or increased insecurity. So I kind of touched on that already. Expecting your path or journey to be exactly the same as other people. So when you expect that your path in life is going to match someone else's, you're off the mark because no two people are the same. They haven't had the same life experience. They haven't had the same worldview. They haven't had the same personality. They haven't had the same gifts, talents, abilities. And a perfect example of this is me and my sister, Laura. We grew up in the same family and we had very differing experiences living in that family. And, we still do to this day. And that's okay. We don't have to be the same person. We're not meant to be the same person. And me and Laura have a lot of similarities, but we're not the same person. And so our path and journey in life isn't going to look the same. I'm dealing with different things than Laura is. And I think that's a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing because then if she's further along in one area than I am, she can help me along and vice versa. And so I think actually having people in your life where you recognize that you have a lot of similarities, but your paths are really different, it's kind of neat because you can have that other perspective in what you're going through. Giving up or believing that you're unsuccessful. So when we see people having success, especially in the areas that we're in, whether it be in ministry or work or school, it can be easier to feel like you're unsuccessful if you're not doing as well as they are. But you might just be having a different experience. You might be on a different path, right? And you may have a different level of success than they do because of that. And that's okay. Some more dangers of comparison is getting stuck. So if you've tried a lot of things and you're not seeming to go where you want to, sometimes you'll stop altogether and you'll just be stuck there. Sometimes you'll lose perspective. Another one is jealousy and envy. So when you're comparing yourself against other people, it's easy to become jealous or envious of where they're at versus where you're at, what they have versus what you have, especially when I was single. When I was single and I was always around couples, it drove me crazy because I wanted to be in a relationship. And so I was really struggling with jealousy and envy when I was single. Anger and resentment is another danger. And that usually follows the jealousy or envy part because you're angry that you're not where they are. You're angry that you aren't achieving what they're achieving. You may have tried all the same things and you're not getting the same results. And from that, you can become resentful of the fact that they have it and you don't. And that's not a healthy place to be. Losing your sense of purpose comes with comparison. Because if you are comparing yourself against somebody else and you feel like you're never going to get where you feel like you're being led to be, or you feel like you can't fulfill the purpose of your life because other people have already filled that gap or done it better than you or whatever, then you can totally lose your sense of purpose and start being aimless. Complacency is another thing that's pretty close to losing your sense of purpose. It's just you don't really care anymore. You're just like on the verge of giving up. And it's just kind of like you're going day by day and there's not a whole lot else going on. You're just trying to survive. Hopelessness, the feeling that you're never going to get out of there. So, what actually motivates us to start down these roads of comparison? Because I feel like a lot of times we don't go out with the intention of, oh, I'm going to compare myself to people today. Like it's just something that happens. And it's not something that we intentionally go out to do. But I don't know about you, but I find myself comparing myself to other people almost every day that I'm in contact with other people. And it's not because I'm always like, oh, what do they have that I don't have? Or how are they better than me? Or how am I worse than them? Or how are they worse than me? Like, it's not that. I feel like sometimes it's just as simple as, how is this person doing today? And then it slips into, oh, they're so much better in this area than I am, right? It's so subtle sometimes. We don't even recognize we're doing it. So I wanted to talk about a few of the things that motivate us to focus on others, because it can kind of give us the flag to tell us, hey, you're about to go on the road of comparison. Maybe you need to refocus. And for each of these things, I also have like kind of a reference point to kind of like recognize the flag. So the first one is, we may not know what steps to take ourselves, so we try to glean it from others. And that can be a positive thing, right? We can learn lessons from others without comparing ourselves to them. And we do this by being curious and seeing which steps we can add to our situation to be able to get to the end of the journey. The danger becomes when we try to make that their journey our own, because we're not them. We're not going to have the same journey as them. We may be able to implement some of their tools. We may be able to implement some of the things they've done, but it's not going to look the same. And we can't expect that. We may want to learn from someone else. This is a good thing as well, until we slip into comparison mode. Learning lessons from other people's experiences is great. But when we want their journey instead of being grateful for our own, we focus on moving forward and we lose focus on moving forward and we end up stuck. And I feel like these are the times when I fall into ruts. You know, I start off wanting to learn something from somebody else, and then I go down that slippery slope and I'm like, but it's not working for me this way. You know, it's supposed to work for me this way. And then I'm like, oh, I just want to give up. Right. And then I stop. And that's dangerous. We need to be constantly moving forward, constantly growing. We're built that way. And so when we stop in our tracks and we stop moving forward, we're actually halting what God wants to do in our lives. So beware of that. We may like the outcome that has happened for another person, and we may want to duplicate that. And these all sound really similar, but they are different. And you can take principles away from others, but understand that you're not that person. You may not be able to duplicate their process that brought them to the outcome that you want to achieve. So you might see that the outcome of what they've done is exactly what you want. So then you think that their process can become your process. And that's not the way that it works. Once again, we're all different. We're all unique. And no two people will ever have the same exact experience or process. And that actually is exciting for me, because that means that every single person's story matters. Every single person's experience matters. And I can learn something from every other person's experience because they're all so different. That is exciting to me. What motivates us to focus on others is also that we may want something another person has. And this is when the jealousy and envy come up. And they're not helpful these are not helpful things in our life. We see that other people have something that we don't, and it breeds dissatisfaction with where we're at in our lives. And it breeds resentment, anger, and contempt for those who do have what we want. And a good example of that is Cain. So anyone who's been to Sunday school probably knows the story of Cain and Abel. If any of you aren't, I'll quickly tell the story. So Cain and Abel were brothers, and they both were giving sacrifices to God. And God looked at both sacrifices, and he accepted Abel's sacrifice, but he rejected Cain's. And Cain became very angry and murdered his brother. And there's a reason why God rejected his um, his offering, because he didn't do it the way that God had requested, right? So there's a reason, but he was jealous of the fact that Abel got the favor from God and he didn't. And so he reacted poorly. He was angry and killed him. And, you know, a lot of us may not become so angry that we kill someone. However, resentment and contempt can be present in our lives a lot of the time. And a lot of times they go unacknowledged, sometimes even hidden from ourselves for years. And yet it starts impacting who we are. It starts impacting how we interact with other people. And until we get to the root of that anger, we're not actually going to get free of it. And a lot of times we don't know that it started off as jealousy or being envious of what somebody else had that we didn't. And I have a story about that. When I was in Bible college, all of my friends were planning out their lives, what ministries they were going to be a part of, and how their lives were going to look. And so I did the same thing. I planned out my life and how it was going to look. And, you know, they were already like getting married off. And so I planned my future and I was set. I was like, this is the way it's going to go. And then it didn't happen. None of it did. Not one single thing. And I was so jealous and envious of what they had that I didn't. They had all of their pieces fell into place. Mine didn't. And I was like, how is this fair? How is it fair that they get exactly what they wanted and I don't? And it became anger towards God. And I buried it. I didn't even know it was there. For years and years, I carried this anger. And I was becoming more and more a person I didn't want to be. And it wasn't until one day when my cousin came over to my house and she sat on my couch and we were just talking, and she was telling me how great my life was. And I was like, no, my life is not everything I've ever wanted it to be. This is what I wanted my life to be. And I laid it all out exactly what I have wanted in college. And she was like, what is wrong with you? You have you have a life that's so much better than what you wanted. Don't you see that? And it was like I got smacked upside the head. And I was like, I've been angry at God for all of these years because I wanted what they had. I wanted to have my plan exactly the way I wanted it. It wasn't God's plan for my life. It was my plan for my life. And God said no. And his plan for my life was better than my own plan for my life. And it took my cousin pointing it out for me to recognize it. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a huge flag, right? So be aware. Jealousy and envy can lead to years of anger in your life that turn you into somebody you don't want to be. Another motivator is that we may feel bad about where we're at. So we look for others who are in a worse place so we can elevate ourselves and help help us to feel better about where we are or who we are. And I've always found that course correction is a much more effective than pitting ourselves against those who are worse places than us. Because when we find people who are struggling in an area that we're actually doing well in, I feel like it's our responsibility to help them, not to like go, okay, I'm in a better place than they are. Good. Right? Because when we look at it that way, we're not encouraged to help them. We're encouraged to let them be. And that's not what God wants. God wants us to lend a helping hand to those who need it. And so God's heart is in that moment for us to recognize they need our help, not to help us feel better about ourselves. Insecurity. So when we feel insecure, we tend to elevate people who support us and are there for us to places they should not be in our lives. We look to them for things we need rather than going to God first for those things. And this is one that is also like pretty slippery slope, pretty sneaky. It's not something that we intend. It's not something that we plan. It's something that sneaks up on us. And, you know, it, we don't even recognize sometimes that's happening until all of a sudden we say something and then we're like, whoa, wait a minute. And I mean, I've done this in my life, you know, sometimes if I've had a really great pastor in my life, all of a sudden I go to them first, then God, right? And that's never the way it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be God first and then other people. You know, we always are supposed to seek God first on matters, especially when He knows us better than we know ourselves. We can go to God first, especially when we're feeling insecure, because He knows who we are to the depth of our heart and soul. You know, if you read Psalm 139, all the way through, you will recognize just how deeply God knows us. And it's like amazing. He knows everything about us. He knows our past, our present, and our future. We don't know our future yet. We haven't experienced it. But because God lives outside of time, He knows it all. So He knows things about me I don't even know. So who should I look to first? Right? A person who's on the same level as me or God, right? But sometimes we go to people first, thinking they're the end all and be all. And, you know, we also have to be careful that people don't seek us first instead of God either. We shouldn't be putting ourselves in those places either. And we need to be careful because, especially when we're helping people, a lot of times that can happen. And so we need to be careful to also be directing them back to God. So how do we shift from comparison into growth? Because that's essentially where we want to be. If you've ever been in the comparison mode, you definitely don't want to stay there, right? It doesn't make you feel good and it doesn't make you grow. So I'm going to list a few things that will help us go from one to the other. First off, remind yourself that you're unique. It's impossible for you to be like another person. God has given you a unique purpose, a journey all your own. Therefore, comparison is of no use, since everyone has their own path, purpose, and destiny to fulfill. Being jealous of what another person has is not going to get you any closer to having it. When we're focused on what others have, we're no longer content with what God has given to us. Let jealousy go and allow yourself to be thankful for what you have, what you've been given, and where you're at. I always find that gratefulness deals with a lot of the negative things that happen in my life. When I'm grateful for the things that God is doing, anxiety goes down. When I'm grateful for the things that God is doing, I find that I don't compare myself to other people as much. When I'm grateful for the things that God has given to me and everything that He is doing in my life, there's all these negative things that just aren't there anymore. I'm not fearful. I'm not like stressed out. It's amazing. when I can actually be thankful for what God is doing and where He has me, how that shift happens. Learn from the lessons God has taught others, but don't try to duplicate their experience. We've talked about that. No two people experience the same thing the same way. Principles can be applied from learning another's experience, but don't expect their experience to be your own. Focus on your own path, your own steps. Celebrate your wins. Learn from your losses. I love that. Learn from your losses and celebrate your wins. How many times do we actually celebrate when we win? You know, a lot of times we win or we have a like breakthrough and we're just like, yes, and we move on. Make those milestones in your life. Make them a big deal. That way, when you look back, those are the things you see. Those are the reminders of your pathway. If you only look back, we tend to see the negative if we don't leave those milestones there to see. So celebrate those things and course correct from losses. Don't let them get you down. These things keep you moving forward. Comparison is a distraction from what God's path is for you. It will slow you down and sometimes even get you to stop altogether, as we've already discussed. So now we're going to move into purpose. So I hope that through seeing that, you can see that if we get too caught up in comparison, we can lose our sense of purpose, which is why it's important that we talk about it. So when I was thinking about purpose, the first question that came to mind is, do I have a purpose? Well, every person has a purpose. You may not know what it is right now, but that doesn't mean you don't have one. God designed each one of us with a purpose. And this is a quote from my book, Unlovable. Your unique mix of gifts, talents, skills, and abilities indicate only you can do what you, not anyone else, what you were designed for. And that's important. God designed you for a specific purpose, and He knew every decision you're going to make. He knew every single gift, talent, skill, ability, personality trait, every single little thing about you. And He incorporated all of those things for the purpose that He has for you. So how unique does your purpose have to be? You know, they keep telling you, like they keep drilling into my head every time I take a marketing course, niche, niche. How much of a niche do each of us actually have? Think about it. There's something that God has called you to specifically that only you can do. That's incredible. So what causes us to lose sight of our purpose? Sometimes it's just getting caught up in the routine of our daily lives, job, work, or school. Sometimes it's low self-esteem or self-doubt. Sometimes it's believing that we've missed the mark, that we haven't achieved it yet, you know, that we are too old to do it. You know, that should have been done 20 years ago. I'm too old to do this now. Fear and people pleasing. And that's actually what the second or what the very last. So that was the very last podcast that just went out, was about people pleasing. So I would definitely encourage you to check that one out. A lot of times we get into people pleasing mode and we're so caught up in making other people happy that we forget what God has put on our hearts for us to do, what God has built us for. And we get so caught up in doing what they want us to do and filling the purpose they have for our lives. And they're not the same thing, at least not in my experience. People's purpose for my life is definitely different than God's. Listening to the naysayers or negative Nancy's. That's a big one. When I was writing my book, I had a lot of people who said, you're never going to finish your book. You're never going to get it out there. Like this is a pipe dream. And I was like, thank you for your support. You guys are awesome. And there were people who loved me but they just didn't see the potential for me to be able to do that. They didn't see that God was calling me that direction. And that's okay. I surrounded myself with people who did believe in me and believed that calling on my life, like my sister, and who were encouraging me in that direction. And those were the people I let speak into that area of my life. So it's just good to know that those people are out there and that they can cause us to lose sight of our purpose, and not to let them have that power over what God has called us to do. Not being in tune with who we are. So this is like a loss of your identity. Like if you don't know who you are, it's hard for you to see what you could possibly do in this world. So if you are disconnected from what your skills are, what your abilities are, or who you even are, then it's hard for you to recognize the purpose that God has for you. So if that's where you're at, then you need to go back and rediscover your identity and who you are. What skills does God give you? What abilities has He given you? What talents, what gifts? You need to go back to the beginning and figure that out. Not knowing God's plan for you or your life, sometimes, we ask God and He's quiet because sometimes it's not the right timing. Sometimes we're not in the right space. Sometimes we need to heal a few things before we can dive into that plan to make sure that we're in a healthy place. And so just because it hasn't been revealed to us doesn't mean the purpose isn't there. It may mean that we need to figure out what is we need to do in that moment. So if that's the case, ask God, is there something standing in the way of my purpose? Is there something in the way that I need to deal with? And if so, bring it to light and let's deal with that. Discouragement. Sometimes if we believe that there's a certain thing that's our purpose in life, and we've tried and we've tried and we've tried and we failed and we failed and we failed, we'll get discouraged. I encourage you, if that is where you're at, shift again. I know it seems daunting, but seriously, course correct and try again. I mean, if you think about all the scientists who come up with these great, amazing inventions, they had to fail over and over and over and over in order to get to that invention. It wasn't like their first try was successful. They had to keep changing things and keep going and keep trying before they found the answer. And that is such a huge thing to remember. Anything in life that it is considered a success is something that took how many tries to get to. The secret is don't give up, keep going. And don't let failure, which is the next one, throw you off course either. Like I said, try again. And sometimes it's a lack of discipline. So if you know what your purpose is, you may need to create some discipline for yourself. You may need some strategy for your life. You may need a plan. You may need to implement some positive habits into your life to make those steps towards that purpose. And if you don't, then that could help you. That could be part of why you lose sight of where you're going and what your purpose is, because you don't have the discipline that will bring you to that point. So how do we regain our sense of purpose? We've talked about how we lose sight of it, but how do we regain it? So first off, we can examine who we are by taking an honest inventory of your personality, gifts, talents, skills, and abilities, which I already talked about. Also, taking an inventory of what brings you life, what gives you energy when you do it, what lights you up. These are the things that you're passionate about, and they're part of the purpose that God has designed just for you. It's almost like it's a barometer, right? Those things that bring us energy and life and light, the reason why they do that is because it is part of what our purpose is in life. And when we focus on those things, it is amazing the things that come out as a result, and God has given me a lot of gifts that I never thought worked together. And yet where I am in life now, I actually put all of those things to work together. And I never saw this coming when I was back in the day. I was like, I have so many weird and things that are, how do they even fit together? Like, I have this skill and these abilities, and how do they work together? But I feel like each step of my path had to happen for me to recognize each of those things and how they could work together in different ways. So don't despise the process either. The process will actually bring clarity. What strength has other people seen in you? What strengths have you seen in yourself? Remind yourself that God has a purpose for your life. And this is my favorite verse. And I've reminded myself of this verse so many times because I need to be reminded. When I start losing my sense of purpose, I will actually quote this to myself over and over and over until I'm like, okay, I'm good, and it's been my life verse. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They're plans for good and not disaster, to give you a hope and a future. God has plans for me. God has good plans for me. And they're not for my disaster. They're for my future and a hope. And I can put my faith in that. I can trust in that and know that, I'm not going to end up completely in a mess. God has something good out there for me, and I can lean on that. Remind yourself that God's purposes will not fail. Proverbs 19:21 says, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. Psalm 33:11 says, but the Lord's plans stand firm forever. His intentions can never be shaken. Never. That's amazing. Remind yourself that God's plans are good. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. Wow. It's good. Surround yourself with supporters and encouragers who move you forward. Like I did with my book, I surrounded myself with other authors. I surrounded myself with my sister, people, and my husband who believed in me and believed that I could do it. Those are the people I surrounded myself with. And moving into destiny. What is destiny? Now, this isn't a dictionary definition. This is what destiny is to me. Destiny is the final destination, the big dream. It's where our path is headed. So ask yourself, where am I headed? Like literally ask yourself that right now and let yourself think, where am I headed? What is my destiny? Where is my final destination on this path called life? Sometimes when we have a dream for our lives and we don't achieve it in the time frame we think we should, we bury it or let it fade or forget about it altogether. And each one of us has a God-given destiny. We have a God-given place where our life is meant to go. God knew our every thought and action, as I shared earlier, that is found in Psalm 139. And he made his plans for our lives accordingly. And, Abraham waited 25 years for his son Isaac. Moses waited 40 years to get to the promised land and just to be able to see it. And Jesus waited 30 years before his ministry on earth began. So even Jesus waited before he stepped into his destiny. And what do you think he was doing during those 30 years? He was preparing. Every step that we go before we enter into what God has put as our destiny is a step towards it, is a stepping stone towards it. That's important to remember. Moses in the wilderness, all of those steps were stepping stones. Everything that happened to Abraham in that 25 years were stepping stones. those waiting times aren't just for waiting, they're to prepare us, to make us ready for what's coming. So what path will you take? If you're still breathing, which I hope all you are, then God still has a destiny for your life. So what are you going to do? Are you going to get closer to it? Have you given up, wandered off track, or forgotten the big dream? Now is the time to choose. Will you continue down the path of disappointment, drudgery, and despair? Or will you forge the path to your destiny? That is a question to consider. Which way are you going to go? Because every single step that we take is a choice towards or a choice away. So what are we going to do? So if you wanted to switch paths, let's say you're on the path towards disappointment, how do you switch paths to get onto the other road? So I wrote a paragraph because I didn't know how to break this into points. So bear with me as this paragraph is 3 slides. So much like finding your purpose, you will need to focus on people who believe in you and the big dream God has for your life. They will be your encouragers, your cheer squad when life starts to derail you. All the other voices you need to let pass you by. There are some people who really love us, but do not understand the big dream that God has given us, and they may discourage you. Don't let them inside your head. Instead, take the big dream and dream even bigger. That's right. I said even bigger. Some of you are already like, I don't know. Just hear me out. Ask God for the big, audacious dream, the one that you don't even think is possible. Let this be the mark at the end of the path that you're headed towards. Then look at the very first step you need to take to get closer. So I think sometimes we get so focused on that place way down at the end of the road. And all we need to do is look at the next step. We need that final place in our mind to motivate us to keep going, to motivate us on those rough days when those steps are so hard. But where we need our focus to be is in that very next step. We don't have to worry about all the steps between here and there. We just need to focus about the next one. And as we achieve that one, then the one after that. By doing it that way, it alleviates so much of the pressure and so much of the stress that we can just walk in that. And we can do, if we take it in those bite-sized pieces, we start feeling the success because we can finish that one step and we're like, I did that. And we can move to the next one. And it's a powerful thing when you start winning these little success steps. Each one is a win, and you put a milestone down. Taking only one step at a time and focusing on only the step in front of you will help you reach that destination, even if the dream seems impossible to reach on your own. Believe God for it. And if it's too big for you alone, He will bring people along with the same dream and vision to come alongside you and bring it to completion at the perfect time. Moses, the dream was big. Letting his people go and getting them to the promised land, that's a big thing. And he, on many occasions, said to God, this is too big for just me. I can't do this alone. I can't do this. I'm not equipped. I can't do this. And so God was like, here, I'll give you Aaron, you know? And then as they sent the spies into the land, who else was there? Joshua and Caleb speaking life into that dream, right? And it's so powerful to know that when it's the perfect timing, those people come in, and it's part of God's plan to help us at those perfect times. And even when I was writing my book, Laura was one of those people for me, and God brought her into my life at just the right time. And she helped me get to my goal. And it was amazing. There are people like that come alongside and bring our dreams to fruition. And that's part of God's plan, because God's plan and timing are always perfect. Ours aren't so much. And this is another quote from my book that I really wanted to share with you guys. And it's about my journey that I took. Every misstep and wrong turn that should have led me away from my destiny ended up being integral parts of my story. God used each one for his good. My decisions did not thwart his destiny for my life. They became stepping stones on the pathway, even when I couldn't see it. The path becomes clear sooner for some than others, but it is never too late. And, I first had it on my heart to write a book when I was in high school. And I honestly never thought I would actually see it happen. And, it did. And for me, that was huge, right? That was a huge dream that I never thought I would ever see happen. So our activation today, I called Breaking Up with Comparison, because I believe that is one of the biggest things that hold us back from being able to enter into our purpose and our destiny. We all compare ourselves to other people, whether we're recognizing it or not. And it's like comparing apples to oranges. They both may be fruit, but they're very different. And we all may be human, but no two people are the same. Our fingerprints are perfect indicators of that. There are no two fingerprints exactly the same. And as unique as our fingerprint is, we are all unique in who we are and what God has purposed for us to do with our lives. So I want you to take the next 5 minutes or so and consider who you have compared yourself to. And how has this impacted you? How has this impacted your purpose? And how has this impacted your dreams or your destiny? And then I want you to ask yourself, how can breaking up with comparison impact you? How can it impact your purpose? And how can it impact your dreams or your destiny? So I'm going to put on some music. So 3 keys to remember from tonight. Number 1, comparison takes our focus off of God and our path and puts our focus on others. This is detrimental to our lives and causes us to lose confidence in who we are. Number 2, we all have a purpose for our lives, and it is unique to us. We should not expect it to be the same as anyone else, nor should other people dictate our purpose for us. I think that's a key point too. Like sometimes people like to give their 2 cents worth and like to tell us what we can and cannot do. And just be careful of that. And number 3, remember the path to your destiny does not have to be completely planned out before you move. You only need to map out the next step. Each one will take you closer to that final destination. And the final thing that I want to share with you tonight is another quote from my book. All the items in our lives build the path that will eventually lead to your future, your God-given destiny, each step bringing you closer to your calling. And I think when we look at life like that, it can be so much better. When we have those tough moments, it's like, okay, this is a step. This is part of the process. This is part of the pathway. It makes it easier to face those things and be thankful for them. When James says, be thankful for your suffering, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about being thankful for the growth that's going to come from it, being thankful for what the aftermath is, not for the circumstance itself. And so just recognizing that is a powerful thing. The next month, me and Laura will be sharing about creating a culture of honor and embracing a life of honor and what that looks like in our lives. And, you know, honor and love go hand in hand, and it can just be a really powerful tool when we honor one another and we live a life that way. And I believe that, you know, when we break comparison, that is part of paving the path to creating a culture of honor where it's not about who is better than who. It's about how can I honor you? How can I, you know, help you be who you God has called you to be? How can I be part of that picture for you? Laura, is there anything else you wanted to share on creating the culture of honor?
Nothing except for please come, because I think it's going to be really great.
Yes, please come. And I'll hand it over to Laura for this.
April is our 100 Pledge project, and it has now launched. We have 6 people that have partnered with us to fundraise in this initiative, and I'm really excited because we've had some new sponsors come on board, one of which is Joyland Theatres in Strathmore. And they've offered 4 admissions to their theater, and that's one of the prizes for anyone who donates to the 100 Pledge Project. And so if you have been impacted by what we're doing at all, my plea and my request is, you know, consider sewing into what we're doing. There is so much time and resources and finances that goes into our retreats, our mentoring, our community events, the podcasting, like everything that we do. We even, you know, have some benevolence that we've given out to some people that are in dire need. And all of these things take money. And, you know, NOSA Foundation is a nonprofit business, and everything that is invested and given goes directly towards supporting the people that we're working with. And so please take time to consider and pray whether this is something that you want to sow into in the month of April. And once again, anyone who does donate will be entered into a draw for these 4 prizes. And it's just really an exciting thing to partner with. And so and it's also my birthday month. So I love this time of year. I love it. And, you know, this is just a way for me to also celebrate. So celebrate with me.
I was also thinking, how can I get people motivated? Because a lot of my friends and stuff are like, oh, yeah, I'll consider. So this year, if I fill my card, I promised that I would dye my hair blue for the whole year. So, yeah, hopefully that's a motivating factor for some people out there. So another thing that's coming up in October is the Advanced Women's Retreat at Kingswold Retreat Center. We will be returning there. I believe there's currently 18 spots left available. And so registration is public on the website right now. So you go to nosafoundation.com and you can register there. And the registration fee does include the workbook. And there are 2 prices there. There's the full price as well as a subsidy price. So if you need the subsidy pricing, please take it. That's why it's there. Laura, is there anything else you want to share about the Advanced Women's Retreat?
Nothing except for I think there's only 17 spots left. One
Okay.
just literally got taken in the last 5 minutes. So
Well, there
these
you go.
spots will go fast, and we'll likely have a waiting list in case there's any cancellations. So if you are wanting to be there, make sure you register as quickly as possible.
Oh, and also to make things easier for people, we've created multiple different payments schedules to fit your needs. So if you need to spread it over 6 months, you can, or if you wanted to pay it all at once, you can do that as well. So there's multiple different things in there that you can choose. So don't feel pressure.
So the highlight this month is we've changed our location and we've changed the day. We're meeting on Wednesday at a new location, also in the southeast. But this is an office complex. Now, the subject that we're going to talk about this month is about Hebrews 10 verses 24 and 25 that talks about coming together as a community, but also about how that actually affects us and affects the growth of the body of Christ. When we don't participate and we don't take that word seriously, it does affect us, affects our families, and affects the community that we live in. And Paul put it there for a purpose. So that's what we're going to talk and share about. And yes, please do come. We'd love to see all of you there. I think there's more details and the registration information is on the slide.
Yeah, and you can also go to nosafoundation.com for that as well. It's in the list of events.
That's right.
And then there's also the Nosa Unleashed podcast, which I've referred to a few times tonight. The last two actually are about some of the content from my book. And there's a lot of great content in the podcast. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a part of it. I'm saying that because it's true. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's great when you're driving, just to throw that on and listen. So. There's also multiple ways that you can contact us. You can either send written information to our mailing address, or you can email us at info@nosafoundation.com, or you can visit our website at nosafoundation.com as well. And you'll find all sorts of resources there. There's a link to our podcast on our resource page. There's links to the webinars, also links to the past years of webinars as well. So if you've missed a few, you can look back and see if any of them pique your interest and go for that. It's also where you can get support or mentorship. There's a lot to be seen on our website, so go ahead and check it out.